Episode 135, Calming Thought Tornadoes with Jennifer Barnhart.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
We have many thoughts that come in and out of our mind each day. We often feel like we have no control over them. When we feel like we have no control over our thoughts, that can sometimes cause a problem because it sets us on a course towards what Coach Jennifer Barnhart likes to call thought tornadoes, a cycle of spinning thoughts in our heads that get us nowhere and leave emotional damage along the way. But there is a way to get out of these, and Jennifer has designed a whole course to help you do it. So listen today to learn more about what a thought tornado actually is and how you can stop having them, and then go sign up for Jennifer's course to put it all into practice. If you have any questions about a thought tornado or anything else related to topics we've discussed here on the podcast, please drop them in the review section of iTunes, and Heather will be sure to answer them in a future episode. Now to today's episode with Jennifer.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. We are glad to have you, those that are listening, and I'm especially glad to have Coach Jennifer Barnhart with me. Hey, Jennifer.
Hi, Heather. So happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, I always love having you here with me. I had to cut us off. We could just sit and chit chat before we hit record. And I thought, oh, we have a job to do. We have to actually
We actually have to go to work, right?
Yes, I know. This is the best work. I love it.
Yes.
I love it so much. Well, Jennifer has been on before and a couple of times actually, and we can hopefully be sure to link to those other episodes in our show notes here today. But even though she's been on before, she's introduced herself before, I'm going to have her do it again because I know we'll have some new listeners as well. So Jennifer, would you give us a quick introduction?
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you again. So my name is Jennifer Barnhart, and I'm a life coach who works with women who have spouses or adult children who have left the church. And the women I work with want to stay active and faithful in the church. And they're actually finding that that's a little harder to find their place at church than they thought it would, because when everything changed for their spouse or for their family and they stop participating, everything changes for you too. So that's who I work with. I am the mother of 4 wonderful daughters and the grandmother of 13 beautiful grandchildren.
Oh my goodness. Lucky daughters, lucky grandchildren, lucky husband.
Lucky me.
Lucky you.
Lucky
yes.
me. Yes.
I know. I love to hear about people's families. And I've had a little bit of interaction with your husband via email. I think he helps you a little bit in your business. So he's
isn't that funny? I talk about spouses leaving the church, and yes, he doesn't help me a little bit. He helps a lot. He's an active partner. He even edits my emails.
Oh my word. That's awesome.
Yes.
I love it.
It's very nice.
I think he's edited some of my emails that I've sent you before.
I actually think you could be right.
He's been like, hey, there's a typo here. So I'm glad someone's paid attention.
It's that picky engineering type.
Ooh, we need those in our life. So,
yes,
oh gosh. All right. So Jennifer, as she mentioned, she works with women whose spouses or children have left the church. And, when someone has a spouse who leaves the church, I know there's a ton of thoughts and emotions come up. Just like you said, they find that it's so many things change for them, not just the initial thing of that spouse or that family member leaving. But can you describe the typical thoughts that someone in this situation has?
Absolutely. Yes, I can. So immediately there's just a lot of fear. There's fear, worry, anxiety, and sometimes anger. but mostly fear. And what you're afraid of is, how are things going to change in your life? You're going to be afraid of what it's going to mean to you that your spouse no longer has the church in their life anymore. There's some fear about participating at church alone. And hugely, for almost everybody, what is going to happen to your family now? What will happen now and what will happen in the eternities? And as some of those fears get answered, a lot of the questions don't get answered, but the fears get answered. The fears fade and you kind of feel grief, but later something will trigger those thoughts. Something will come up, like a ceiling that the spouse can't attend, or tithing settlement, or a milestone like a baptism or a missionary farewell. There might be something said in church, or even recently for me, a heading in a church manual, and everything kind of comes up again and you start feeling the fear. Kind of are like, this isn't how I thought my life would be.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with you before, and one of the things you said was traditions, like some of the traditions we have in the church, baptisms and things like that we center, a big activity around. You kind of had to grieve the loss of that and had to figure out new traditions. And that was something I hadn't considered before, but I was so glad that you brought that up, because it really was important for me to recognize that.
Well, and it's kind of ongoing. Every time you come up against something, like, for instance, many, if not most of people that have been our friends over the years are serving missions now.
Okay.
So, it's like, oh, that's a new one. They're writing home, telling everybody how wonderful that is.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And you're having different experiences.
I have a different experience. Yes.
Yeah. Which is, from this standpoint now, I'm sure you're able to say, which is not good or bad, right? It's just your experience. But initially you're readjusting to something new.
So you adjust it to it and you accept it. And then actually you end up, there's a little bit of relief. Like, I'm not sure I would have loved serving a mission. So there's a tiny bit of that. You've got some of that. But every once in a while, there's something that kind of like pricks you and you're like, yeah, okay, that's still tender. And it probably always will be.
Yeah. You said that there's always something new that comes up, or there's a new event, something that you didn't foresee coming, like friends serving missions. We all have these thoughts that play over and over on repeat in our brains about everything, really. Our brains love to do that. They love to create problems, which is that there's nothing wrong with this. That's just how it works. But you have developed a workshop, you had mentioned, to help people in this situation deal with this thought loops that just keep coming back. Can you explain this workshop and what it teaches for people?
Yeah, you bet I can. So I call it calming thought tornadoes. So let me first tell you kind of what thought tornadoes are.
I can guess right now what a thought tornado is. I think there's frequently one going on in my brain.
Well, and it's such a descriptive word. I actually think it's possible, although I don't remember. I think it's possible I created it, but I don't know for sure. So
I bet you did. I haven't heard it before. But
well, okay. So I may or may not take credit, but they're ruminating thoughts that come. They're thinking the same or similar negative thoughts over and over. And they come when you're not busy or when you're in neutral. They take over and you feel stuck in them. But the biggest thing that they create is what I call a damage and debris field. So feeling anxiety, sleepless nights, consuming you. So you look around and you can see that there's this damage that they're creating. And I used to have thought tornadoes a lot. They started when I was helping my aging parents. And after both of them passed, I started thinking, this wasn't how their life was supposed to end. What could I have done to help them? How could I have changed it? How could I prevent that? How can I make this not happen to me? And this was going on for me at about the same time that my husband was leaving the church. And I felt like all the peace had been taken from my life. So eventually I conquered my own thought tornadoes, and I created this 3-part workshop. And it consists of becoming aware of the thoughts that create the thought tornadoes, and then recognizing that you have more control over your thoughts than you thought you did, and then replacing the thoughts with something that's more helpful to you.
Okay, that is awesome. And I love the visual of I know I'm not going to say it right, but the debris,
Yes.
that kind of what gets left behind. It just wreaks havoc in so many different areas if you cannot contain those thought tornadoes.
Well, and that's one of those things, is that I've got a daughter that lives in Oklahoma. We see pictures all the time of tornadoes going through there and broken things and, scattered all over. And that's when I realized that's what those thought tornadoes are doing to my life.
Yes.
Yeah, they are just creating havoc, and they aren't helping me.
Yeah. And I think what's so interesting is it creates havoc in our own brain and in our own life, that wreckage and debris. But it doesn't just affect us. It ends up affecting the people around us as well.
Absolutely. Yes, it does. Pretty much everybody that you rub up against.
Yeah.
You've kind of got something going on in your brain, and it's hard to think about other things or people.
Yeah. So tell me, why do you think our brains create these thought tornadoes? I have a visual of a little dirt devil in my mind. So like a devil seems like a really good word for it too.
Okay, well, and there's actually maybe some of that, but your brain thinks that it's trying to help you solve your problems. And it's actually a misuse of our problem solving skills, because we don't solve the problem. We're creating a story, and then we're reliving it over and over again with all of the same feeling, creating all of the same damage.
Yeah. This is what I find so fascinating is, we think that the problem is continuing, but really we're just propagating the problem. We're continuing the problem by thinking about it over and over and over and over and over again. It happened one time, and we make it last for 20 years or whatever.
Well, the thing is if there's actually a problem you can solve, you need to make the time to sit down and take care of the problem, and use your problem solving skills and get through it. So I'm not saying that you just want to, not deal with the problems, because sometimes there are things you can take care of, but mostly there isn't.
Yeah.
If there were a simple solution, you would have come up with it. A lot of times, these are problems that don't belong to us.
Yeah. I know for me, when I notice that thought tornado happening, I'll have to say to myself, listen, I've already scheduled time on the calendar to work on this problem. We're not going to think about it right now. And even just thinking about that, even just telling myself that brings me, I can calm down right then, knowing, oh yeah, I'm going to work on this. I'm just not going to do it right now. Because somehow we think that we are solving the problem by ruminating and letting it go round and round and round. We're not. It's just getting worse and worse in our brains.
Well, and we're kind of letting our brains run us, not us run the brain.
Yeah.
We are in charge of our brain. We are the boss, not the brain.
Yes. Reminder of that. Maybe we should put reminders on our phone to remind us of that, I'm sure.
Well,
so
I actually have little cards of this. I don't see them right here in front of me, but I keep them around to help me remind me.
Yeah. So helpful. I'm kind of the queen of sticky notes, and I have things stuck all over the place to remind myself to do those things. But so tell me what the results people are seeing from going through this workshop with you.
Well, the very first thing that I've noticed is that many people realize that they have more control over their thoughts than they thought they did. So immediately they feel some relief. They feel more calm and more peace. And it's been interesting to me, even in an amusing way, that people find that they have more time in their schedule.
That's an interesting one.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And well, that's because they start thinking more intentionally, and then they're choosing what they want to focus on. So they're not wasting their time in thought tornadoes. They move on to things that they might enjoy more, or problems they actually have.
Hmm. Well, I think about the times when like I said, I'll say, hey, I've already scheduled time to think about this issue on the calendar. It frees me up to just take care and do some things now rather than just think about that particular problem that is there in cycling. I'm free to do other things.
Yes. Yeah. Things that you might like doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might find that there are that you have some hobbies that you have time for that you didn't realize that you did.
Who knew? The replacing the thoughts in my workshop, the replacing thoughts, I call that planting flowers. So we're going to go plant beautiful things in our life that we can enjoy more. And lo and behold, I find that there is a lot more time in my life to enjoy beautiful things when I'm not worried about stuff I have no control over.
Yeah, that's a beautiful gift of learning the skill here. I know for myself that has been one of the great bonuses of doing it, not just from being free of the commotion that's going on inside of me, but also having some time to do other things that I love to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's one of the things that we tell ourselves all the time is that I don't really have time
Yeah.
for, whatever it is that we enjoy. And we actually have more time than we think we do.
Yeah. Well, when our brain is running crazy like it is, it really cannot see that you could put one more thing into it. Right. There's so much
Yes.
already happening. It just doesn't even seem like that you're capable of doing it. And with your brain running like that, you probably aren't, to be honest, right? Like it would just feel like it would put you into overwhelm to try to introduce one more thing. But
Yes.
when you learn the skills to and understand how to quiet and calm the brain, it does make space. And yeah, I mean, it really is true that most likely you might not have room for it when you're running at that
Yes.
pace.
Yeah. And yes, that's true. You probably don't.
Yeah.
Yes. And I like the way you said you couldn't, the overwhelm, you couldn't add one more thing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you realize that you've just created that for yourself and you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
That you're choosing to do it. And then you're like, I don't choose that. I don't want to choose that. I don't want this in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think that, and I'm curious if you have found this, but I know that some of the clients that I work with, it's easy for them to kind of get into a little bit of a shame cycle when they recognize that they are choosing to think some of the thoughts that they think they start initially. It's easy for them to kind of use these tools against themselves. They use it to be like, well, I'm causing this then, like, what's wrong with me for causing this? And I think that's something to be aware of for people. That's not how it's intended to be used. It's just a tool for awareness.
It's something I say all the time that we're taught these beautiful tools and we immediately turn them on ourselves to berate ourselves with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you're right. That's absolutely not how this is designed to be used. One of the things I teach in it is to have this power phrase. And it calms me down as soon as I say it. As soon as the thought tornadoes start for me, I say, I have a whole system, but at the end of it, I say, I don't do this anymore. And I'm like, oh, right. I don't do this anymore. Wait a minute. I don't do this anymore. And it's just part of the stopping. It's like, this isn't something I do anymore.
And that feels so good.
It
Like
does.
you put yourself in the control, in the driver's seat, and you get to be in charge. This is funny. I'm going to like little side note here. I was having a conversation with my dad we have people at my house every Sunday for dinner. My family comes over and my dad was over and he knows what I do, but he never pays attention. Right. I'm certain he doesn't listen to podcasts. He doesn't, whatever. And for something came up and I was trying to describe to him, like the different parts of our brain, and we either run on autopilot or we have to be in charge. And it's been kind of interesting. It was funny to have a conversation with him, for him to see that there was actually some pieces that he had control over, rather than he didn't just have to let things run on autopilot all the time. And anyway, whether or not that does anything for him, and but it gave us something to laugh about a little bit too, when he was like asking questions and laughing about it. Just even a little bit of awareness is so powerful in our lives, to know that we have some control.
Well, I think a lot of people think thoughts just happen to them,
Yeah.
that they fall out of the blue somewhere, land on us, and we have
Yeah.
no control over it.
Yeah.
And I did have a woman in one of these workshops who I always asked for takeaways at the end. And she was like, I never, ever realized that I had any control over that. I'm going to have to think about this.
Yes, for sure. The only time that I think that I will say that I've had a thought that this just dropped into my head is when it's a thought that I recognize to be something that is so productive and helpful for me, that I know it's coming from its divine intervention. It's something from my heavenly parents. It's through the Holy Ghost. That to me is the time when I know that it's something that I can pay attention to, when I know that the fruits of that thought are going to be so good. And I recognize that it's not a thought that I could ever have come up with on my own.
That is such a beautiful way to look at that, because that's exactly how I see it. There are times when, and really specifically, I teach the 16, 17, 18-year-olds in Sunday school. And last week, while I was preparing a lesson, and we had so much in that lesson, and one chapter all of a sudden lined itself up with another one. And I was like, and they don't have anything to do with each other, but all of a sudden I had this aha moment. And for me, it was so beautiful to see something that line up. And I knew, just like you did, just like you're describing, this is one of those moments. This is a gift that has been given to me by the Spirit, that I get to see something that I wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those are magical moments. And
those are magical moments.
Yeah, I know. Love to talk about that too. I love the space where we can bring in our profession and our religious beliefs at the same time. So,
well, and you have to realize that those are the exact opposite of thought tornadoes. When
yes.
you are wandering around, and that actually was part of my discovery of those thought tornadoes. One day I lost something and I was racing up and down, looking for it, looking for it, looking for it. And all of a sudden I heard kind of, a voice in the back of my head that says, you don't feel the Spirit when you're rushing around like that. And I was like, what?
I don't.
And, and that's been several years. And now when something like that happens, I go slower and I start and I say, is there any help that you can give me here? Because I'm going to slow down and go slower. I don't feel the Spirit when I am rushing.
Yeah, that's been a really interesting thing for me to learn. I mean, we're taught about listening to the influence of the Holy Ghost our entire lives. And to be honest, when I started learning about how I could have more control over my thoughts, it did kind of throw me for a little bit of a loop. Like, have I been making, like, the things that I used to think were the Spirit prompting me or inspiring me, was that just my own brain creating thoughts? And I had to kind of dissect those things a little bit and start to pay a little bit more attention to things and recognize that when the fruits of what I was thinking of were helpful and they were thoughts that I knew I could not come up with on my own, those were for sure fruits of the Spirit and from the Holy Ghost. But so many things are not. But we have to really learn to pay attention. Is this going to help me become who I want to be? Is this going to help me have the relationship that I want to have with people? That's from the Spirit. If not, I need to rethink what I'm thinking about.
Yes. And I find that I go back and kind of study what the fruits of the Spirit are over and over again, just to kind of touch base and make sure that because the thing is that I know that we're feeling it constantly. It's ever present. It's so familiar to us that we don't even recognize it. But when you go back and look at the fruits of the Spirit and go, yes, I've got that in my life. Yes, there's peace. Yes, there's love. Yes, there is. Yes, the Spirit is with me, and that's what I've been promised. And it's so familiar that we don't even hardly notice.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that has been so interesting for me to ponder and think upon. It's just that, like, when would I even know what my life would be like without the Spirit? And because I feel like I have strived to listen and pay attention my whole life. I've been taught about it my entire life. And I'm always wanting to have that conversation with people. Like, tell me what it's like. Did you notice a big difference when you didn't have the gift of the Holy Ghost versus when you did? And anyway, I'm totally going on a tangent here, but I think that's something that's really interesting to think about.
That is something interesting to think about.
Anyway, I've been side railed us there, or whatever. I can't even I'm not even thinking of the words rightly, but okay. So Jennifer, tell me, how will somebody know if this program is right for them, something that would be helpful for them?
Well, so first of all, if you recognize yourself in our conversation, if you recognize those swirling thoughts or the debris field, then this would be a great workshop for you. So if you're feeling fearful, if you find yourself worrying constantly, if you feel stuck in those emotions, if you find yourself awake at night with your thoughts going over and over, or if you just want to know what you can do to reduce or stop them. Anybody that can see themselves in this picture, what we've been talking about, this would be great for them.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing some of that with us today. And thank you for giving us I think really some things to think about and to just pay attention. We think that it's just normal, that we have to just constantly live with that chaos in our brain. And I use the word chaos, and I really truly mean it. It can oftentimes just feel like chaos or that thought tornado. And it is not something that we have to just deal with and have to just.
It's not. No,
Yeah.
We can overcome them.
Yeah. So thank you for giving us some pointers and tips into there today. We will link to these different things in our show notes, but will you share with people where they can find more of you or more information about this workshop as well?
Absolutely. So I'm going to be teaching a free Calming Thought Tornadoes workshop on August 10th at noon Pacific time. And Heather's going to put that link to it in the show notes. So I would love to have you join me and learn how you can quiet those thought tornadoes. But if you want to hear more from me, the easiest way to do that is to go over and sign up for my email. And you will find that, again, I'll give that link to Heather, but you go to jennybcoaching.com. And along the top toolbar, there's an email icon, and you would just click on that to sign up. And I would tell you that those emails come every single week, but that would not be true. They come out, theoretically, they come out weekly, and I would say maybe 3 times a month they come out. But they are full of things that will help people who are in mixed faith marriages.
So good. And to be honest, yes, I know you work with people who are in a traditional mixed faith marriage, but I just want to say that for the most part, we all are, because even when we belong to the same religion, our beliefs are so different. Our backgrounds are so different that we see things very differently. And no matter where you are, these tools are helpful.
They are. And you're right. That's something that I say frequently, that we're all in mixed faith marriages. Yeah. We all see the gospel a little differently.
For sure. And I think for me, like when I remember being young and married, that our differences, the way we saw things in the gospel, were our hardest things to get around. And then how we, implemented that into our parenting, it was some things that we really had to figure out. And it wasn't until, I don't know, I finally kind of decided and learned that, it's okay. It's okay that we see these things differently.
Well, and that actually is I think that my husband and I, there's a very good chance that the two of us have more frank conversations about the church than more frank, more direct. It's a time that we treasure when we wake up in the morning and have time to just kind of have long conversations about our own experiences. And we know we don't see it from the same perspective.
Yeah.
And we're still able to share that part of ourselves with each other.
Yeah, I love that. And that is something that we can all, that's what we all want, right? It's called being differentiated, right? The ability to be who you are, let somebody else be who they are, and still have a relationship and not think that we have to be the same in order to have the relationship that we want to have. Like, we can have differences. We need to be able to be ourselves.
We can have differences. And then there are things that will come up too that you have to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. Like I said, we will link to all those things in the show notes. You guys can find all of the awesomeness there. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been very delightful and I really appreciate it.
I love it. And thank you to all of you who are listening. Please share this with people that you love, and we will see you again next time.
Thank you.
Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.